coming up in 1 minute.
How did the idea come for you guys to come to Texas?
Man, it really came from mostly Dad, like his record collection and all the shit we were listening to growing up. Chris immediately, like when we first moved to town, Cody called Chris. Like we were living in an attic in South Austin, above the house that we would eventually move into. But like for the first 5 or 6 weeks, we were living in an attic.
Y'all had to move down to move up.
For $200, we lived in somebody's attic when we first got to town.
With a V.
Oh yeah, like had all our shit piled on one
The
side
A-frame.
of the room,
You had to walk in the middle.
Those Lucy shows, like that set it off. Like all of a sudden, it was kind of like, I don't even know why, but it was the place to be on Monday nights, you know. And
well, yeah.
And the word started getting around. It was back in those days when like the Chronicle would say something and people would pay attention to it, or like Chris Wall would tell Bruce Robeson and he would tell somebody else, and you know, all of a sudden there was like this thing that we had like for I don't know 2 or 3 years. Like Lucy's Monday nights was.
And from there, on the weekends, you were getting booked from Davis. Where? No. Jackin Around podcast is brought to you by Lone Star Dry Goods, a collection of handcrafted quality goods with a truly unique Americana vibe. Visit the world headquarters in the heart of downtown Abilene, Texas, and Willow Park, Texas, in Fort Worth. Visit LoneStarDryGoods.com for more information. Welcome to the Jackin Around podcast, available on your favorite audio platforms and in video on YouTube. For links and info, visit JackinAroundPodcast.com. So how you been, Willy Braun?
Good. Are we rolling?
Oh, yeah.
Well, all right. Just like to know before I start.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Jackin Around with me and Willy Braun today from Reckless Kelly and from the Braun Brothers and from Muzzy. And what's your mom's name?
Joanne.
Muzzy and Joanne, the hosts with the most.
They are pretty mosty.
That party y'all throw at Braun Brothers reunion is pretty great.
It's great, right?
Yeah.
So you've done it twice, right?
Yeah, but I've done the reunion twice, but this is the first time I went out to the house.
Oh yeah, that was the Sunday party after the reunion is like, it's the best day. It's like, and I hate to say this on the air because like the fans are like, well, I want to go, but like that's just for the artists and the people that help us put it on, the volunteers and all of our friends that are like on the staff and yada yada. And so you saw it. It was a smaller circle, and we get to all kind of everybody except Mom. We get to relax, and she's still worried about making sure the pickle fork is set on the right side.
Of course, but it's so fun, man. It's such a family.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd always heard, Ingram, you got to stay, but you know me.
Oh yeah,
I'm usually in and out.
Dude, if we're on the road and somebody's like, "Oh, come to the family barbecue," I'm like, "No thanks."
Like, y'all have fun.
Offense, but yeah, it sounds great. But we got shit to do. But that's kind of an exception to the rule, I think. There's a lot of guys that stick around for that one.
Well, now that I have stuck around for it, I will every time, you know, because it's really, you get an insight into your family and to why y'all are so close and just how cool your dad's down there burning shit on the barbecue.
He does the ribs and he does them individually, like which as a cook myself, like I cook ribs too and do the same exact technique, but I cook them in like full slabs or half slabs.
Like a rack, yeah.
Yeah, a rack of ribs. And so, you've got like 6 racks of ribs. You flip them all over 6 times. Yeah. He cuts them all into individual strips. So it's like he's got to do it 100 times.
And he's got everything sauced up already. And
yeah.
I was down there trying to BS with him, and he was having none of it. He's like, if you're going to be down here talking to me, get to work. And handed me some tongs and
yeah.
I was like, yes, sir.
That's kind of his deal. He'll lure you in with like the smell, and they walk by to say hello and be like, oh, hey, what you got going on, Muzz? And then all of a sudden, you're sitting there with an apron on and some tongs and the slather mop.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
But it's good. It's a fun party. I mean, it's a great concert.
It's a good one.
Y'all should be really proud of how many years have y'all done it?
Well, my brothers and I have been involved for, I think, like 5. Like Cody, Gary, and Mickey got involved probably 5 years ago when Mom and Dad were like getting to the point where they were like, this is a little too much for us to handle anymore. And so
did it used to just be called Braun family reunion?
It's always been the Braun Brothers reunion. Like this version of it, like it's kind of a long story. So like before the Braun Brothers reunion, they always did concerts. Like they would do the Stanley Stomp, which is way back in the day, like in the 70s, or the Braun Brothers Idaho swing dance competition, which is an actual swing dance competition.
Oh, wow.
Where they would
and so
have,
Muzzy had brothers. You have uncles that were in the music.
That was the original Braun Brothers. They call themselves the original Braun Brothers now because...
The OG.
Yeah, because we came along, so they had to differentiate between the two. They're the original Braun Brothers, but they were back in the day, and they would do the Braun Brothers swing dance contest. And it was like, exactly what it sounds like. There's, a
bunch of swing bands.
They would sign up, and it would be like some of them were like matching uniforms and shit, and they would
like poodle skirts and shit.
Yeah, well, not poodle skirts, but like the matching jean.
I got you. The Idaho version of the swing.
Well, most of them were probably handmade and shit, but like they would come up and they would do like their swing dancing routine, and they would have numbers like on their back like a rodeo.
Oh yeah,
like the swing dancing competition, and that was back like I would say maybe late 70s, but probably more like early 80s. And so Stanley Stomp to the swing dance competition to some other stuff that Dad did back in the day with his brothers, kind of morphed into the Braun Brothers reunion, which started in my mind, and I'm kind of the historian of the family. I'm going to say it started in 1987 in Stanley, Idaho, because the original Braun Brothers reunion, which people on the podcast can't see the air quotes, but
yeah, they can.
It's a reunion. Oh yeah, we're on air. Good, sweet. Glad I look so good today.
You look so much different than every other time I see you.
This is my camera face. But no, they started doing the Braun Brothers reunion. It was going to be like a one-time thing because Dad and his brothers started playing in high school in like 67. I was
about to say.
It was 67 or 68. And they had a band called The Syndicate. And so they'd been playing for 20 years at that point. Which was
I love it how you guys are all brothers and you all play, but you never really used the Braun Brothers as a band name.
We haven't done it yet. Yeah. We might.
I mean, even your dad, The Syndicate, instead he's playing with his brothers.
Well, no, he had a band called the Braun Brothers back in the day.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. Him and his brother Gary were the Braun Brothers.
Gotcha.
When his brother Billy had already Billy peeled out early on. He was like, fuck this shit. Whatever, I guess.
Did he take a straight job or something?
No. He's probably the best musician in the family. Like, he played his own deal. Billy Braun, or the Billy Braun Band, which is one guy. He does like a one-man band.
I love those kinds of...
He has like the harmonica rack with 3 harmonicas on it.
He's got this...
Yeah, like 3 different keys. It just stays on, and he has like a kick drum and a snare drum. One of which I sold him when I was like 10. and so he's like a kind of thing and plays harp, and he's a fantastic guitar player. And he plays mostly like old big band stuff. Like
wow. So like
Crosby and,
real chords.
Yeah. Oh, real chords. Like he knows the real
like
chords.
Swing chords.
Yeah, he's undoubtedly undisputed the best musician in the band or in the family, I mean.
Yeah.
So
you can play all those passing chords. And
naturally, Dad kicked him out.
You were getting too big for your britches.
Right? Actually, I honestly don't even know how that all happened, like why Billy peeled out from him and Gary. But at some point, Billy went and did his own solo thing, and then Dad and Gary formed the Braun Brothers, which were Dad on acoustic guitar and Uncle Gary on drums and harmonica.
Right? Drums and harmonica.
Yeah. Drums,
like
guitar and harmonica, and no bass. And they were pretty popular.
The original White Stripes.
Exactly. They were like the Jack White of Idaho back in the day. Which when I was a kid, I always thought it was weird because when we were playing in Dad's band, like a lot of times Mickey wouldn't play bass or Mickey wasn't even available. So it would be me playing drums, Dad playing guitar, acoustic, and Cody playing fiddle. And Dad singing and Cody and I doing harmony and stuff. And it's
amazing how that kind of starts to work out once you figure out what the sounds are.
Yeah. And I would like
where the holes are
on the kick drum and stuff, because like didn't take me long to figure out that something was missing, and it was the bass.
Right.
So we did a lot of gigs without bass.
You know who does that now is Ray.
Ray Wylie?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
He goes without a bass. And sometimes Kyle, his most times drummer, Kyle Snyder, sometimes he'll do he's got a pad up there that if you hit, that you can hit the like a bass note,
or like a big kettle drum type,
something like that. You know, it has notes, but it's not. I don't think it's a foot pedal. I think it's a trigger.
It's funny because like once you get used to it and you're not missing it, you know, as far as like the no bass band,
right?
It's fine.
Yeah,
like if you started like a song with the bass and then you take it away, like
yeah,
nope.
I remember the very first time I ever played with a bass player. And that feeling of like, oh, this is like air just came underneath us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you take it away, you're going to miss it.
And if you have a bass player who's not familiar with the tunes,
that can be,
you're going to notice it.
That can be pretty ugly.
Like that's one of the heaviest members of the band that gets overlooked a lot of times.
Well, I've always thought that. Yeah. I remember when I first started playing and watching bands and kind of when I was starting out as my own band leader, and I'd be dissecting other people's members. And I was like, oh, the whole idea of the bass is that if you notice him, he's not playing it right.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like playing rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
Same exact deal. You don't notice it until it's gone.
Right.
Or shitty.
Or if it's bad. If you notice the bass player, something's gone terribly wrong.
Can I say shitty on this podcast?
You can say whatever you want.
Fucking A.
I mean, except fucking A.
Oh.
I'm kidding.
I got a red button.
So this whole Braun family legacy has always been up in the Northwest in Idaho.
Yeah, pretty much. My grandfather, as far as back as I can trace the musical aspect of shit, was from North Dakota, Musty Braun.
Oh wow!
And he played accordion. He was Lawrence Welk's second cousin or third cousin or first cousin or something.
So you're related to royalty.
We're like third cousins with Lawrence Welk somehow. You'd have to get
shout out to Lawrence Welk
to figure that one out. But like they were in that same like neck of the woods up there, and so Grandpa Musty, whose real name was Eustachius.
Dude, he should have kept Eustachius.
I know. It's badass, right? If I ever have a kid.
Euster.
So he played accordion and at some point moved to Idaho from North Dakota.
How many states over is North Dakota?
It's just got to get through Montana.
That's what
yeah.
It's always
too long
states.
Big ass western states.
Seems like further away than it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like driving from Texas to Florida, basically.
Did you know that it takes longer to get from Texarkana to El Paso than it does from El Paso to LA?
Really? I believe that.
Just a fun little fact here.
When we moved down to Texas, we got to El Paso because we were coming through LA, like when the band first started out. And we were driving two rigs. We had a Suburban and somebody's pickup. Mm-hmm. And we were, carrying.
Did you have all your shit? All your stuff?
All of our shit. Like it was.
Just you and Cody?
No, it was me, Cody, Jazz. No, Jazz wasn't with us, actually. He was back in North Carolina finishing school, which he never did. Casey, our original guitar player, and Shifty, the old bass player.
Oh, I remember Shifty.
And I think it was just the four.
Did something happen to Shifty?
Not really.
I think I've seen him working in somewhere.
He's out in Oregon. We haven't seen him in a while, but if he's out there, if you're listening, Shifty,
Shifty, we miss you. Drop a line.
Right? Love Shifty.
I mean, we don't want you back in the band or nothing, but
well, the position's full, but no, but we came through our last gig before we moved to Texas. We played the LA County Fair like 5 or 6 days in a row, like one of those 3 shows.
Oh, the 3 shows.
Yeah.
God, I don't miss those. I do not miss those, brother.
And I think that's the first time we ever met you, was we were doing one of those 2 shows a day deals, and we played, and then you played, and then we played, and then you played.
Where were we?
It's somewhere in Oregon. A long time.
Oh, the Oregon State Fair.
Yeah.
Don Williams was playing that time, I think.
Yeah. And we I think that was the first year we had moved to Austin and had like toured outside of Austin.
Yeah.
And we knew who you were. And we played a show on the same stage. Like we do like our 40-minute set. And then we took all of our shit off. And you guys set up and played. And then you took your shit off. We set our stuff back up. And then vice versa. Like, and that's the first time I remember meeting you. And I'm glad you kind of maybe remember that. Cause like, I was like, almost thinking like maybe I made that up.
No,
but I'm pretty sure we did that.
I remember it.
And that was shit, like 25 at least years ago.
That would have been 97, 98.
Yeah.
Something
right
like
there.
that.
Yeah.
Cause that's when I remember doing all those, we did the same thing at the Minnesota State Fair. Those 3 sets.
Yeah, the goddamn 3 sets a day. And then there's like a bubble gum blowing contest between your set or a polka band or some Chinese acrobats.
I call it, we were on the puppet stage.
Yeah.
Like the puppet show stage.
I told him once, I told him 1,000 times. Reckless Kelly first, puppet show last.
That's right. Don't ever follow a puppet show. So hold on, what was the reason y'all, that you, like, how did the idea come from you, for you guys to come to Texas?
Man, it really came from mostly Dad, like his record collection and all the shit we were listening to growing up. Like we always listening to, Guy Clark and Robert Earle and Rodney Crowell and Steve Earle and a lot of that stuff. Like all these guys that, like when we were starting our own thing, guys that were really heavy influences on us. And we moved to Oregon.
Now those influences, correct me if I'm wrong, and I haven't heard Muzzy play that often, but those influences don't really show up. He's much more of a cowboy.
Yeah,
singer.
like those weren't Dad's like influences. Those were ours. Like he kind of turned us on to those guys. His guys were like, he grew up, like I said, he was playing in a 60s rock and roll band. Like, so they were all into the Beatles and the Stones and, Herman's Hermits and that shit.
Right.
And then at some point he got into country music and he discovered like Jerry Jeff and, later on Robert Earle. He was always a big like Bob Wills fan.
I was about to say his influences to me feel like
way more
poetry.
country. Yeah. And the cowboy poetry is a great example because like the guys that he would hang out with in Elko at that cowboy poetry thing, guys like Red Stiegel and
that kind of stuff.
Don Edwards and Baxter Black and cats like that who were kind of musicians too, but also poets and stuff. Yeah. That was always way on that side of the country thing. Mm-hmm. But he grew up with like rock and roll, so when we were kids, we had like Chuck Berry records and the Everly Brothers and and Beach Boys and shit like that. But he was always like, I remember having a conversation with Dad at one point, like year or two before we left the band, where I was like, man, I want to, like, can we do some rock and roll? And he was like, yeah, I already did that shit. Like we're kind of doing country now. And we've got our thing, it's not going to really work if we
How old were you when you're talking to him about this?
Like 15 probably.
Yeah.
Because I started listening to rock and roll when I was like 13 or 14. Because like we didn't listen to any rock and roll growing up. Like, other than like old shit, like we listened to Chuck Berry and the Everly Brothers,
right? Like rock and roll,
yeah. But we didn't, like at that point when we were kids, it was like the hair bands and Def Leppard and Twisted Sister and shit.
So when you were 14, 15 years old, what year was that?
Like 92 or something. Yeah, 92, 93.
Wait, you were born in
78.
I'm not real good at math.
I was born in 78, so at that point. It was probably like,
I
don't know, 14, 15 when I started listening to rock and roll. And I kind of almost had to like sneak it in, like, because it was like, we didn't listen to rock and roll. It wasn't like forbidden or anything, but it was like,
it was
culture. Made fun of and stuff because it was all the hairband shit.
Rat
and it
and
was
Poison.
Like, and we were like, these guys are a bunch of jerk offs.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny because.
And that's what I thought rock and roll was.
Oh, I get it.
Like we were all like, that's rock and roll. Like that shit sucks.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm just old enough to when that started coming out, I was like, this is a very not a good representation of what real rock and roll is.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Because I knew it. But it's funny, you're like, what? Rock and roll sucks.
Rock and roll stupid. Yeah. So we were country guys and yeah, exactly. So then like somebody turned us on to like, the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and
by the way, I'm having Bret Michaels on here next week.
Are you really?
No.
You should.
It would be fun.
You might get a rose. and later on in life, now I look back on those guys. I'm like, they had some pretty cool shit.
Absolutely.
Like,
some of them did.
As a bunch of kids who grew up in the sticks like we did, listening to nothing but country, like watching these guys in their football pants and
yeah, man,
no shirts, it was just like, what?
But it's real easy to. I feel like it's always been real easy to see the glue between Chuck Berry and the Everly Brothers and country. I mean, that's always been so obvious.
Especially the Everly Brothers. That is country, and Chuck too. Like all that stuff is like, it's so rooted in the same formula. And
okay, so hold on. You're talking to your dad about wanting to play rock and roll. He's going, hey man, and how does that morph into we're going to Austin?
Well, this was like a couple of years before Cody and I left the band. I remember like being in the band, the family band, which is Cody, me, Gary, and Mickey, and Dad, And we'd been doing this for a long time. And I remember I just started listening to rock and roll. And I was like, hey, can we, I don't remember if it was a song or something I wanted to do or whatever. And it would have been like a Beatles tune or a Chuck Berry song or some shit.
Not a stretch.
I wasn't going to come at him with the latest... I don't know,
CC
U2 song or something. But I just remember Dad being like, well, it's like, well, I already did that. And like, we have our thing, like we're a family country Western band, and it doesn't really fit into what we do. And I remember just being like, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
And then, but a couple of years later when Cody and I left the band, for lack of a better term, we just basically grew up and wanted to do our own thing.
Yeah, it wasn't an I quit.
No, not at all. It was kind of weird because I made Cody tell Dad because Cody and I had met these other guys out in Oregon that we were playing kind of country rock shit, and that's what we wanted to do. And so that's kind of ties into what I remember a year or two earlier. Then I was telling Dad I wanted to play some rock and roll, and I like playing. I like playing. I was a drummer, so. Swinging is fun, it's fun to play swing, Western swing and all that stuff, but I wanted to get out front and play a little rock and roll. So Cody and I started our own band. And when we did that, I made Cody tell Dad,
how much older was Cody than you?
He's about a year and a half.
Yeah.
A little less than a year and a half.
Hey, big brother.
Irish twins. So yeah, him and I had this idea. We're like, man, we met these guys in Oregon. We're like, let's go start this band with these guys. But it's like somebody's got to tell Dad,
Right. Was Muzzy bummed, or was it just a dad knowing his kids are moving on?
A little of both, yeah. Same deal. He was bummed because we had a fairly successful band at that time, with the kids and Dad, and we were doing the fair circuit type of shit, And
was it fun? Was it edgy enough for you, or was it? I guess it wasn't.
No, at that point it wasn't. At that point we wanted to do our thing, And if we'd have stuck around a little longer, I bet Dad would have been like, okay, well, we can try to morph this into more of a country rock type of thing or something. But at that point, when, we were ready to fly the coop anyway. And Cody was like, hey, Dad, we met these guys out in Oregon and we were going to go out there and live there this fall,
Who was that promoter that?
You know the guy?
That dude.
But
I remember we hung out all night one night at his house. Us and y'all. And it was late, and Gus came and goes, and Gus was hammered and goes, Jack, I need to talk to you. And he goes, I'm sleeping in the van. We're not sleeping in there. I go, what's going on? And he told me the whole story. I was like, oh shit. Wow.
Whoops-a-daisy.
Because Gus had these really pretty eyes.
Well, he was a handsome fella.
So anyway, you say we're leaving.
Yeah, so you
packed up
I made Cody tell Dad. And like you asked, Dad was, he was definitely bummed, because, we were the band,
Yeah.
And Mickey and Gary were still probably 13, 14 or something like that. I was only 17.
Right.
And so Cody and I left. I was 17. He was 18. We moved to Oregon. But at the same time, Dad was like, do your thing.
Yeah,
I was 7. There was never any resistance whatsoever. He was like, all right, cool. So we peeled out, and they were always really supportive, still are.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, looking back, I was like, kind of like, I wish I could have softened the blow a little better, and maybe I had to talk to Dad too at the same time. But you know,
You're 17.
Cody
dude.
ripped the Band-Aid off. And,
Yeah, man.
And we peeled out.
That's the way it goes.
But so yeah, so we moved to Oregon, and it was like it was me, Cody. Our original band was Shifty on bass, Casey Pollock on guitar, and this drummer Kennan, and Shifty's brother Steve was also playing guitar. And we were going for like this Eagles thing.
Oh wow.
Like 3 lead singers, lots of harmonies. Like there was 4 guys in the band could sing
Right.
pretty well. And so we're doing like 4-part harmonies and like for lack of a better destination, we were trying to, you know, for that Eagles type of vibe.
Right.
Doing the country rock thing.
Right.
And that lasted for like 6 months. And like the drummer and Shifty's older brother and the manager, Charlie, were really angling for the Nashville sound, you know. And
right.
This is like late 90s, so 95 or something. So I'm talking like
Clay Walker.
Crawl kind of shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were like Cody, me, and the other 2 guys, Jazz, and Jazz wasn't even in the band at this point. But we were just like, no. And Shifty and Casey were just like, that's not what we want to do. Like we just left a you know, country western band to go do our thing, and so
right.
our thing is going to be what we want to do. Like, and we were pretty adamant, even at like 17.
That's great that you knew that, man.
Way. Yeah, we never bought it for a second, you know,
right?
Like, even at that age, because we were just like, no, man, like this is what we want to do. And like we had the sound in our head, like we knew
right.
what it was going to be. And so, long story short, we made one.
Was even the Eagles thing kind of a little soft for you at the time?
Well, yeah.
Or were y'all doing it?
Yeah, and it wasn't like we set out to be like the Eagles. It was like we wanted to do like it was Graham Parsons.
I got you.
Eagles, Everly Brothers.
I got you.
That country rock thing. You know, it had nothing to do with the Nashville thing that was going on at the time.
Right.
And it still continues pretty much. You know, it was.
We all had to fight that.
Way back, you know, we thought it was the worst it was going to get. But.
Well, it was I used to always compare that type of music in Nashville to the same thing you're talking about with the hair metal stuff.
Yeah.
It felt equivalent to me as far as what I thought how cool it was.
Right.
Or lack thereof.
And looking back, it's not bad.
No.
Some of it. You know, some of it's like,
well, that's the thing, man.
Yeah.
When you look back, there's always 3 or 4 at the top where you go, wow, that's not like that. That's great. That you could do that in any era.
Right. Or it's like, oh, at least that was a good song and they just had shitty production, or at least that guy was a hell of a singer. Or,
yeah.
You know,
and a lot of it's just being caught up in the technology of the day.
Yeah. And the copycat of the day.
Absolutely.
You know, like whatever it was then, I don't remember, but like for a while it was, we're all writing songs about sailboats.
That's right.
You know, and the beach. Like, everybody's talking about t-shirts and barbecue stains, or now it's trucks, you know, or whatever.
That's right.
The latest thing is like, and that's every genre.
There's like people laugh at Texas for beer and
Texas
and rivers in Texas.
When we moved to Texas, that was the thing. Like I was like, I'm never writing any songs about Texas, because like it was the same thing.
I did my best.
It's too much Texas.
I agree, man. Especially when it's the copycats.
Yeah. And looking back, same deal. Like that's a good song. I don't give a shit what he's talking about. Like it's a cool song.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Now, did you ever hook up I know y'all played background, or y'all were the band for Tainted Angel for Chris Wall.
Yeah.
Was that right when y'all got to town, or a few years after?
That would have been, I'd have to say like 4 or 5 years after we got to town, because we met Chris right when we got to town.
Just because of the Northwest connection?
Yeah. Like he knew Dad through Jerry Jeff. And so we moved to town. The 2 people Dad told us to look up were Robert Earle and Jerry Jeff, because Dad knew Robert, because I'm pretty sure this is true. I think Dad's the first guy that ever recorded one of Robert's songs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like first guy to ever he cut Willy Boy on my birthday. I think when I was like 7.
That's cool.
Or something, because he was out.
I don't even know if I know that song, and I think I know all of his songs.
Willy Boy, Robert Earle. Oh, it's great. It's about a horse. Anyway, check it out. It's one of his earlier tunes, but I'm pretty sure that's the first guy that ever cut one of Robert's tunes was Dad. And so,
that's cool.
And well, he's at least the first guy that ever sent him a royalty check, because there's a bootleg tape that I used to have, and I don't think I still have, but that somebody gave me of Robert Earle at like a county fair somewhere back in the early 80s, talking about this guy named Muzzy Brown cut my song, and he's my hero, and he sent me a check for $200.
That is so cool, man.
And so Dad knew Robert and Chris. And so when we moved to Austin, we looked him up. Like we didn't have Robert's number, but we went to the
back when you
Ziegenbach Fest, and Robert was signing autographs at the merch table, and Cody and I went up and we're like, "Hey, you remember Dad? His name's Muzzy." And he was like, "Yeah," and he was super cool. And I don't know if we got his number or whatever, but we at that point we knew him and he knew us, and
and same with Chris. You just kind of.
Well, Chris, I think we had his number. We got down and somebody knew Chris's number.
And did he hook you up with Jerry Jeff? And
no, we never really got into
Jerry Jeff's atmosphere.
Well. Yeah, no. Always obviously loved him, and we played a few shows with him, but never we're tight in that circle.
Right. But so Robert took you under his wing right away. I remember being almost jealous, because I was like, God dang, man.
Right. Well,
he loves these guys.
Robert did, I would say about a year or so, or maybe a year or two into it. Chris immediately, when we first moved to town, Cody called Chris. We were living in an attic in South Austin above the house that we would eventually move into. But for the first 5 or 6 weeks, we were living in an attic.
Y'all had to move down to move up.
For $200, we lived in somebody's attic when we first got to town.
With a V.
Oh, yeah. Had all our shit popping on
the A-frame. You had to walk in the middle.
But I remember meeting Chris, because the guys were all old enough to go out and drink, or at least had fake IDs. And I was 18, and I didn't have a fake ID yet. So the first couple of weeks, the guys would all go out and they'd hit 6th Street and get banged up and come back to the attic and be 3 a.m, hey. And I'd be like, guys have fun.
This is fun. So glad we moved down here.
I'd be up there writing songs and shit. But one night they came back and Chris was with them. They went out and saw Chris, and Cody went and talked to Chris. And so they came back and brought Chris, and they were all trashed,
Dude, Chris was always so supportive, especially of younger talent or younger artists.
Well, and that's, I know I don't think we'd met before we got here, but the first time I remember hearing about you, or at least the first time I acknowledged your presence, was when he talked about you in that song, my old friend Jack with the beat up Ford.
Yeah.
And on the
on Tainted Angel.
Yeah, no, was it Tainted Angel? It was.
Yeah.
No, so I guess I thought I knew you before then.
Yeah,
but I remember being like, okay, he's legit.
if Chris is name dropping him, he's legit.
But yeah, so Chris immediately he came down and saw us play at Lucy's, because we had got, and this is actually when we first met him. This is way before the Lucy's gig, or way before. I mean, a couple weeks. But shit moved really fast when we moved to Austin.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
But Chris was always right on board, and as soon as we got ourselves into this deal where we had made a record with the wrong producer, and it was recorded out of phase, and it sounded like shit, and we were didn't have the money to pay for it. It was one of those.
Did it get released?
Yeah, it was Milliken.
Oh boy!
So our classic Reckless Kelly, our first huge, terrible mistake, as far as business goes. We made a record at Arlen with this producer who I probably shouldn't mention again because he'd probably sue us, but a guy from Austin,
right?
And wasn't really a producer, but we met him, was this guy's got a really nice van, and he wants to produce the record, type of thing.
He's gonna let us do it for $20,000 up front.
Yeah, so we went and did this record, and all of a sudden we owe Arlen $10,000, and we don't have that kind of dough at all. I mean, we can't even pay rent, and but we had a decent record, but was recorded out of phase. So Chris came in, paid off the studio bills, picked up the record, put it on his label, and had Merle Brigante, a great producer from here in town who produced some of Chris's shit. He came in and remixed it at his place.
That's what I mean, man.
And
how
so
cool is that?
That's Milliken, and that's our first record, and it wouldn't have come out I don't know. We probably would have figured a way to figure it out, but like Milliken was all about Chris. Like he made that record happen, like big time. Like came in and was just like, I got a few bucks. You kids seem all right, so let's fix this. And then he put us on his label and put it out.
And that's when things really started moving.
Yeah, yeah. Like things went fucking fast back in the day. Like it was kind of.
Well, must have been like, think about the great memory that is of being the new kids in town. And being and having, that's the thing, man, is like you guys got to come to town and be the new kids in town after you'd already been on the road 10 years. Mm-hmm. Like that's the worst part, is that when you're the new kid in town and you don't have your chops.
Well, the band hadn't been together for 10 years, but Cody and I had.
But you guys knew how to work a stage and you knew how to write a song.
We had good guys. And actually, I didn't know how to write a song at that point. Like I'd been writing songs for a couple of years, and we came down here with kind of chips on our shoulder, like because we were up in Oregon playing like "The Road Goes On Forever" and "The Party Never Ends" and "Fast Train to Georgia" and "The Hottest Thing in Town" and shit like that, and Sunvolt songs that nobody had ever heard of.
Right.
You know, like, so we're up there playing these songs and they're like, God, these guys are great. And they had no idea that wasn't our shit.
So you come down here where those songs come from.
Yeah. We come down to Texas and all of a sudden we're like a cover band. Like it's like playing Road Goes On Forever is like playing, Mustang Sally.
Redneck Mother.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I better start writing for real. Like, cause I had written, a handful of songs and Shifty had too, but at that point, it's like, we're playing 4 hours a night. Like, I need to start writing. So I started writing a bunch at that point. But
yeah, but you knew your way around songs.
Yeah, to your point, Cody and I were like, we were pretty comfy on stage, and like jazz wasn't even here yet at this juncture. But everybody in the band had been on stage quite a bit, and like we moved to Austin. One of our main goals to come to Austin because we had never been here. We just wanted to like get our shit together. Like we were like, let's go somewhere where we can play like 5 nights a week and get tight as a band.
So it's
and we'll see if Austin sucks or if the music scene sucks there, we'll peel out in a year or two or whatever. We'll give it a wing. But we knew.
Where'd the Beatles go? Luxembourg?
Hamburg.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like that.
Austin was your
like,
Hamburg.
Austin was like where all of our favorite musicians came from, all of our favorite songwriters. And we knew there's a great live music scene. And we knew there wasn't a lot of industry down here. So we were like, well, let's go to Austin and get the sound together. Mm-hmm. Like, let's go play 5 or 6 nights a week. And let's get good as a band. And then from there, we'll see what happens. Like, maybe Austin's great. 25 years later, we're still here. But
yeah,
at that point, we were kind of like, let's give it a wing. And if it sucks, let's get a year or two of playing together and then move to Nashville or LA or New York or wherever.
So Chris Wall takes you under his wing, fronts the money to fix the record.
Yeah.
And then Robert Earle falls head over heels. Y'all became friends with him, and y'all went and opened shows for him. And
yeah,
I remember that. I remember just being like, whoa, I can't wait to really dig in with these guys, because everybody that I dig seems to really dig them.
It was funny because it happens like way faster than it really should have, maybe. I don't know. But like, because we started playing at Lucy's on Congress. On 6th Street, I should say. And we were all busboys there. And it was the same back in the day. Like, you give the manager the tape, like every time he came into work. Like, me and Shifty and Casey were all busboys at Lucy's, and we would give him the tape. And like, finally he was like, fuck, I'll listen to one of your goddamn tapes. And so he finally did. And then they had they weren't going to have live music there.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't doing so well. And they were like, well, we might start having live music. And they had Dick Dale came and played like their grand opening.
Wow.
And that went pretty well. So then they were like, well, maybe we're on 6th Street. Every other bar has live music. Maybe we should try a band. So like, they were like, well, these guys will do it for nothing. So so we even played for nothing. We're like, we just want to play.
Right.
It was our first real gig in Austin. And we set up by the windows at Lucy's in Austin on stools. And Jazz wasn't in town yet because he was still finishing school.
So glad he decided to do that.
He was committed to move down, but he was like 2 months away from coming down to join. And so the 4 of us, we set up and we played an acoustic show. And people would walk by and they opened up the windows. And like on 6th Street on Monday night, which was SIN night, Service Industry Night,
mm-hmm.
And we ended up with like a pretty good house, like of people just walking by and going like, oh, what's this shit? You know, this is different. Because there wasn't a lot of country rock bands in Austin at that joint or at that juncture. Like we were
96, 90.
Yeah, 96.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a few of the guys that had done it before us, you know, the Robert Earls and, you know, Ray Wylie and Jerry Jeff. And
but I guess there wasn't really many nightly.
There was no young band on 6th Street playing country rock.
Right.
That I can. And Corey Morrow actually was playing down
the street.
2 or 3 doors down. I'm trying to remember what bar he was at. Hang 'em High. Yeah. Yeah.
I used to play there every now and again.
Time. He was doing like him and another dude on acoustics type of thing. But that was the only country thing. Yeah.
I remember Chris had a ball during that time too, because he loved you guys. And like Pat was starting to bubble up and do well, and Corey was. And I remember it was one of Chris's favorite pastimes to get really hammered and line out to everybody who was what the pecking order was as far as talent goes.
Really?
Oh yeah, he was ruthless. But luckily I didn't live here, so I didn't have to be in the lineup.
Oh, I'm glad I don't know where we fell in that.
No, he loved you guys, and he would say, I remember he'd go, Bruce has more talent in his pinky than Charlie has in his whole body, but Charlie's got charisma.
Yeah, that's a total Chris statement. No, he really did. Like he got right behind us. Like he was great. Like he was one of the reasons. Like he got Dale Watson to come out and see us play, and he brought Bruce to see us play.
Yeah,
our booking agent at the time, Davis McClarty.
I had Davis at the time.
Our first booking agent, was Davis, who was great.
Oh yeah,
and still is like great and a great drummer. Jesus,
no kidding.
Joe Ely.
I remember when he was doing. See, The Road Goes On Forever, or Me and Billy the Kid with Joe Ely, and they did a full-on video for it. And it was killer, man.
I never saw that.
And Davis,
that's great.
It was just a live studio video, and it was really cool. Davis always played. I love the way he played the hi-hat.
Yeah, and everything else was subtle.
Yeah,
you know, like, and every time he made a move, it was a move.
Yeah, he was funny because when I asked him to be my booking agent, this was probably before you guys. This was in '94, and I had been doing all the booking for myself, and it was mostly frat gigs and Waterloo Ice House and just back 40. I used to play this place called the Cloak Room.
Oh, the Cloak Room? Really? Yeah. They had gigs there by the Capitol?
Are you shitting me? And there was a dude so I would just play by myself. And during my breaks, there was like a congressman or somebody who was always at the bar who had narcolepsy, and I'd steal his drinks.
And then you just blame it on his narcolepsy.
I was like, I don't know.
That's a dick move.
It was a dick move. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, man. So Davis, I remember he goes, okay, first he said, no, I'm not into it. But then after he said, no, I'm not into it, he goes, well, how much money did you gross last year? And I said, 65 grand, I think, playing like 80 shows or something.
Right.
He goes, well, maybe we should work together. So we did. And that was right about a year later when he's, that's kind of my recollection of all of this is how fast it came on and how solid it was when I saw you guys play and heard the music. I go, well, how'd they do that?
Looking back, it's hard to even track it because it really did happen fast. Like, and even at the time, we didn't realize it because
we were 18.
And I thought we were going to be, you know, bigger than the goddamn Beatles.
Yeah,
you know?
Bigger than Jesus.
You know? So at that point, it was just like, oh, well, this is how it happens.
This is what's supposed to be going on.
All right, cool. Yeah, we got 3
Act like you've
gigs
been here before.
Now the place is packed every Monday night. But that's pretty much what happened. Like, and we got one of the ladies that owned Lucy's, Susan. She knew somebody at KLBJ, and so she got us on the morning show with Dudley and Bob and Deborah at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we went in there and did a morning show, and they didn't really have music, but we went in and played like a couple live songs. And for whatever reason, they loved us. Probably because we showed up shit-faced, like having not slept.
Right.
You know.
Young rock and rollers.
Rolled in at 6 a.m, having not gone to bed or something.
Isn't that
And they were
funny?
like, these guys are great.
You get patted on the back for that when you're young.
Not so much anymore.
When you're young, it's cute.
Boy, those are the days.
No kidding.
But yeah, so then they had us back a bunch, and we were on the morning show like every couple weeks for a while. And then the Lucy show was every Monday, and it was I don't know, that thing blew up fast. And I attribute that to the open windows. Like the windows were open, and Jazz showed up in town, and we had a drummer, but it was an acoustic set.
Right. What was he playing, like a hi-hat and snare or
just
something?
a snare, and that was it. Like, yeah, we were all sitting on high stools, and he had a snare with like on a taller snare stand.
Yeah.
And but yeah, those Lucy shows, like that set it off. Like all of a sudden it was kind of like, I don't even know why, but it was the place to be on Monday nights, you know. And
well, yeah.
And the word started getting around. It was back in those days when like the Chronicle would say something and people would pay attention to it, or like Chris Wall would tell Bruce Robeson and he would tell somebody else, and you know, all of a sudden there was like this thing that we had like for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, like Lucy's Monday nights was.
And from there on the weekends, you were getting booked from Davis, where like going like to Houston or
doing like
Satellite Lounge.
Yeah, Satellite Lounge. Go up in Dallas and playing in Deep Ellum at like what was Mike Snyder's place, the Gypsy Tea Room.
Gypsy Tea Room.
And opening for Chris, and you know, like started getting like opening for like the Derailers, and Davis. We got us to open up for Alejandro at Stubbs, and I'd never heard of Alejandro. I still remember that night. Like we were like, "Hey, you open up for this guy. Everybody knows him around here."
Y'all still play some of his songs?
Yeah, I still
like her better when she
vividly seeing Alejandro for the first time. And just being like 100% blown away. Just like, holy shit, who is this guy? Never heard of him. Like,
well, see, that's part of what the appeal is when you have musicianship like you guys do and did, is that his appeal to 3-chord Texas country singers is a little more advanced. You know, his music's a lot more advanced than that.
Way more advanced than the rest of us.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen him 100 times, and he's got a different set of band members every time. Every single time I've ever seen him has been amazing. Like he can have a 3-piece band, he can be solo, he can have. I've seen him with 15 people on stage with strings and backup singers and horns and the whole shittery.
Yeah,
and it's always amazing. And he's playing, you know, whatever's right, whatever the songs are right for that set or whatever. But like,
just the appreciation of that is a different kind of animal that I'm sure was a part of why people came out on Mondays and why it happened so fast. Because it's like these young kids. Are pretty damn good musicians and understand this other kind of thing too.
And we were playing a bunch of like, we still had to do a bunch of covers because I was writing as fast as I could, like to get some of our own shit.
Like a song or two a week.
Like maybe more. Like probably like, I wouldn't say a song a day, but like 2 or 3, 4 songs a week, and you know, half of them were shitty, so they didn't make it.
They filled space though.
But I was putting a new song in the set every week at least, probably, but. Eventually we started working on some other shit, you know, like different covers, and we still kept playing like The Road Goes On and that kind of shit. But we started trying to not be that Texas cover band right off the bat, because we realized immediately that like, don't pigeonhole ourselves into this and become
it's hard when you do a cover and people really love your version of it, because it's like I did a version of Road Goes On Forever and I still get asked to do that, and I'm like, sorry guys, that's never going to happen again. Yeah. So now I can't remember the words.
I think I probably could actually.
I can remember a couple of them.
But we were doing so much of that it was like, so we started like the covers we started branching out to were shit that people hadn't heard around here.
Right.
You know, like we would do like a U2 cover or Elvis Costello or shit like that. So to fill the space. But we made a conscious decision right off the bat. We were like, we got to stop doing all this Texas shit, because otherwise we're going to be just another, you know,
that
not that there's anything wrong with it, but a cover bar band, and that's it, you know, and then we're branded. So we stopped that almost immediately.
That's the other part about being a kid in a band, in a family band, and a family music, coming from a musical background, is that kind of understanding is next level. And it normally takes people going ahead and making that mistake full on before they go, oh shit.
Yeah.
But the fact that you knew the difference between originals and covers and how that affected your perception.
That is funny because I remember like Cody and I we're like the crowd that saw those first few shows that we would play like The Road Goes On Forever or Georgia on the Fast Train or something, and they were like, yeah. And it was like, what a blast to play that on stage. But it's immediately after the show, Cody and I were like, we got to stop doing this shit. Otherwise, this is it.
I remember we got to make them yell at some of our songs.
Our guitar player at the time was like, they love this stuff. Why are we not playing this stuff? It's like, dude, this ain't going to last forever, man. Yeah. It's like we need to get our own shit going on.
That's a quick burn.
Yeah. And that's funny. I never even thought about that. Like the fact that we realized that.
Well, because your dad probably, your dad did originals and you saw it's almost like metamorphosis.
If we'd have stayed in Idaho, I may have never started writing songs,
Or osmosis.
Musmosis.
So hold on, man. What have you guys, over the last year, man, what have you been doing? Like, where'd you hang out during the pandemic?
The pandemic. I was up in Idaho the whole time.
The whole time?
The whole time. It was great. I came back to Austin twice between March of 2020 and when we started back on the road. Like I came back for a couple of weeks twice just for, I can't even remember why. Like I just stayed up there because it's a perfect place to hide out.
Were you at your parents' house or?
No, I've got my own place out there and it's in the middle of nowhere. Like it's like literally like nobody around. Mickey and Gary have places right next to me. And it's in the middle of our county is I think the second or third largest county in Idaho, and there's like 4,000 people there. Like there's not a stoplight in Custer County.
And are you up in the sticks? Like in the middle of the snow?
I'm in the middle of like a big old dried up lake bed from, a million years ago and mountains all around. And it's high desert. I'm like at 6,000 feet. And it's high desert. And like I said, like there's 4,000 people in the whole county. So we were pretty social distanced anyway. But like it was the perfect place to go hide out for the whole thing. Cause like,
did you go a little stir crazy?
No, I love it. I love being by myself. And I also got my Mickey and Gary were up there quite a bit. Mom and Dad are close. They're like an hour and change away. After like the first couple of months of like the real hardcore lockdown, we were all really like freaked out. We figured out who was taking it seriously, and we'd had like basically hung out with the same like 12 or 15 people for a year and a half. Like people I knew weren't going to be like getting mom and dad sick. Basically.
Right.
That was where we were at. It was like, you guys come on over, but like, you guys taking this shit seriously? Because it was kind of weird. Like I didn't want to get political about it, but I was still just like, hey, I'm not going to go see mom tomorrow if you were in Boise yesterday,
right.
Like, and we were hanging out. So
it's funny, man. Whenever it kind of started to open up a little bit, I didn't want it to get political either, but it was so funny, man. If I had a show somewhere, some house concert or whatever, and you leave the city limits and you have your mask on, I remember walking into truck stops like in Brady or wherever, and you get this look like,
yeah.
And then if you took your mask off and did it inside the city limits, like asshole.
What's this?
Like it was so.
It's still kind of like that.
It was a hot button, man.
It's funny, man. Like we've just got done with, 50 or so shows out on both sides of the country, and same deal. Like I wear my mask because like that's what I guess we're supposed to do right now. It's just totally cool with me. I'm vaccinated, but it's like I ain't gonna tell anybody what to do. But like if I wear my mask into a hotel and if there's no sign on the door, then I know when I walk in there, I'm gonna be the only goddamn guy in there with a fucking mask on. And I'm still gonna keep it on. But it's like you get that look, and it's like, and it was way worse back then. Like even in like the little town where I was at in Idaho, they didn't believe in it at all. Like,
oh yeah,
and
I'm
they
sure.
still don't. Like, and God bless them. They do what they do. But it's like, I was like, well, I don't know. If I go to town, I'm going to spend as little time as I possibly can. I'm going to wear a mask, and I'm going to get my shit, and I'm going to get out. And
right. It was interesting when it was also a hot button issue about playing shows, and I was like, part of me cared. And then the other part of me was like, I've been watching people make bad decisions in front of me for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'm on stage. I'm socially distanced. And it's if they don't want to wear a mask, like I can't control them, but I also have bills.
Yeah, you have to get to the point where we kind of like, you know, we spent a year and a half hiding out, you know, like, and I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed the shit out of being by myself up in Idaho for a year and a half. So I'm not going to act like I suffered or anything, but when we made a decision as a band to come back to work in June, we kind of had to wrap our heads around that whole deal. It was like, well, there's about half the people out there that are vaxxed and masked and believe in this shit. And there's a bunch of people, and a lot of our fans don't want to do that. You know, they don't believe in that shit.
Right.
So, but at the same time, we were just like, well, we did our part, you know, like we've been hiding out. Like if we want to keep, if the band's to keep together without going bankrupt, and, you know, we need to start making some more money again, because we run out of the auxiliary funds.
Yeah, man.
And so going back on the road is weird, because, like, you know, we're playing to crowds. I'm sure you're the same. Like, they're, depending on where you go, which is about, I don't know, at least less than half of what we usually do. Where they are wearing masks and requiring vax cards and stuff. And then if you play in places where they don't, the crowds are about the same as they used to be. But my personal mindset is, I'm just like, man, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. And all the guys in our band are vaxxed up.
Yeah.
We wear masks. We follow whatever the mandates are that are going around. And if you want to come out to a show that doesn't require that kind of stuff, that's on you. You know, it's like, that's up to you, you know, and that's as real as I can get about it. Cause it's just
the only
like
person
shit.
in my band that's not vaxxed up and I can't tell him what to do is Pete.
Really?
He's one of those guys, man. And you can't talk him.
I thought you were going to say Frenchie.
Is Frenchie I think Frenchie is vaxxed.
Yeah, he is.
But Pete.
Yeah.
And he's like, no.
No, he just doesn't. No.
He's
no
always
dice.
been that kind of on that side of the political spectrum of like, stay out of my life.
Well, you know, it's funny because, like, I try to stay out of politics as much as I can publicly. You know,
Yeah.
I certainly don't do it on stage outside of like a political song here and there.
I'll make a joke. I'll make veiled
Right.
references.
I don't even do that.
I think that's kind of fun to see what you can get away with.
I like singing political songs. Watch these people that don't have any idea what I'm talking about. Sing
That's a
along to
good
it.
one too.
That's my favorite. That's the way I go. But I won't get up there and like do a big stump speech on stage, because nobody wants to hear
It doesn't
that
help
shit.
us.
Yeah. But I forget what we were talking about.
Vaxxed.
The vax. Yeah.
Pete.
But yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. But I don't know. Like, it's up to them, but like, it's also up to us too. Like, if we don't want to play there, we won't. Like, we've done a few shows here and there where I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, this might be a super spreader, you know?
Yeah.
But my guys are covered, and beyond the barrier between the front of the stage and
That's kind
the
of what I
crowd,
mean.
It's like, man, that's up to you guys. You know,
It's
what I mean?
always been up to
I
you.
don't
If you
wanna,
want to
like, act like a
drive
dick.
home drunk,
Yeah.
if you want to do illicit, if you want to cheat on your girlfriend, or like, that's always been out there.
Right.
I can only take care of what I got, what's on stage.
Yeah. And that's our space, you know. And overwhelmingly, the venues are all about it. Like, almost every place we play, like the sound guys and the crew guys and the guy who opens the door when you show up at the joint is masked up. And
Because they want to stay in business, man.
yeah, and it's like, it's tough. Like, I don't know, like, there's this huge worker shortage across the country. There's not a lot of, like, businesses are shutting down on Mondays when they didn't used to, and they're closing at 9 when they used to be open till midnight. And there's a lot of that, and there's all kinds of that kind of shit. But like, the music industry, like, it's literally fighting for its life, especially the venues. Like, the bands, I think, will be okay, because, like, we can take a few weeks off or a few months off or a year or two off and be like, hey, you guys want to get the band together?
Yeah,
Like,
and
that's
musicians have
easier.
always been like roaches.
Yeah, and we're like, okay, yeah, let's do it. I was, hanging drywall for 2 years, but I'll play bass again, you know?
Right.
But the venues, if they close down, that's fucking it.
And they,
you know?
even venues that are really successful have about a 2-week window of money.
Especially some of these, like the cities we play, you know, like you go to New York, like those guys, like, what do you think the rent is at City Winery in New York, you know, or I don't know, the Variety Playhouse in Atlanta. What's their nut, you know, to keep the doors open for a month.
Right.
Like,
it's a lot.
So it's not, I think the music industry is threatened more by that than it is anything.
I will tell you this. Have you noticed the beauty of audiences now? I'm not talking about a honky tonk bar, but even that too. But like the Playhouses and the Heights theaters, and have you noticed how grateful? There's two things I've noticed. One is how grateful people seem to be that you're there and that they get to be there. And two, remember when gasoline prices went from like $1.50 to $4?
Rich time.
When like 2005 or 6.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I remember I was
when gas on the bus was like
we'd pull in at the gas station or the truck stop at like 3 a.m. and I'd go $1,000.
Yeah. $1,200.
Okay, another $1,000.
Yeah. It was almost like gallons per mile.
That's right.
It was like we were almost like to like the ship version.
But here's what I'm talking about for this pandemic stuff is that when it then went from 4, so it went from 150 to 4. Then when it went from 4 down to 250 or 3, everyone was so grateful.
Right.
And that kind of feels like what ticket prices are going to do. Like, because I don't know about y'all's shows, but our if a ticket price was $25 before the pandemic, with the half houses, they upped those ticket prices and people got used to paying them.
Yeah. Well,
and I wonder how that's going to play out.
I don't know about the ticket prices per se. I haven't even honestly thought about that. I know our numbers are down. Like most of the places we play, especially we just did a East Coast tour, and it encompasses the Southeast and the up to New York and that area, and the Southeast. And like we play like say Atlanta, and there's pretty normal numbers, but you go up to New York and about a half a house,
right?
And again, not to get too political with it, but there's definitely a correlation between the demographics, and we haven't tried to raise ticket prices or anything yet. Or I don't know if
what do you mean by the demographics? Are you saying that in the South? What do you say?
I'm going to say again, not to get too political, but the red states and blue states definitely have a different perspective on it. And,
that's true.
To each his own. Like I said, I already
you're
came
a purple
to terms
state
with whether or not I'm going to play these shows, and however you guys want to treat it on your side of the barricade is up to you.
Yeah.
That's how we have to look at it at this juncture, because like if it's up to me, I'd just take another 2 years off.
Go look at the mountains.
The shit out of that.
Did you write much?
A little bit, not a ton, not as much as I should have.
Not as much as I thought I would have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if I knew I had like a year and a half off, who knows if I would have wrote more or less, but I don't know, probably the same. But like, there's a lot of things I got done during the pandemic, during my time off up there. And
did any bad habits creep up?
None that weren't already there.
Did it even get exacerbated?
I got lazier.
There you go.
Yeah. It's harder to leave the couch.
No doubt. Especially, man, up there, that must be magical without to walk outside with a cup of coffee.
Oh, dude, it's the best. Like, I love it. I go up there as much as I can. I kind of consider myself a resident up there now again, like, because after the year and a half of living there for the most part, like, I mean, like, I don't know, it's just in the middle of nowhere. Like, I can ride up there, even though I didn't a lot. Like,
right.
I have a ton of ideas, and I'm going to go this winter when we get off in a couple of weeks. I'm going to go up and I'm going to ride as much as I can, because we're about ready for a new record and stuff. But
does Cody get in on the riding much?
No. I'm not sure why. He's never been like that. That's probably because he doesn't play guitar. But every once in a while, he'll have an idea. But
he's funny, man. I can see where he might not be into it, because he has such a cynical view. Not cynical, but just smart ass view whenever we do those. Like, he was the first one I ever heard go, boring.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. He's like, quit your touchy-feely shit.
I think his mind is taken up with the business side of shit. Like, and it's not a knock because he's the most talented musician in the band. He's the best singer I know. Like he's a fantastic musician.
Yeah, he really
but
is.
He doesn't have to think about that. Like he just does that.
Yeah,
that shit's just natural. And I think the other side of his brain, where the creative aspect for writing is taken up for
taking care of shit that matters.
Yeah, getting shit done that I'm not going to get.
Yeah,
done.
other shit that.
Yeah,
yin and yang.
And that's the only way I can explain it. Because otherwise, he could write me under the table. If he ever sat down and like got good at it, he'd probably be fucking great at it.
I bet he'd have great melodies.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
So what are y'all doing now, man? You got a record out or making one or?
No, we just put out this 9/11 demos thing that came out on 9/11, which is just the demos we made. We were in Arlen on 9/11 making like a demo.
Oh wow!
And we recorded 16 songs on September 11th and 12th, those 2 days. And,
in 2001?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
And so we had those demos, and most of the songs wound up on records, but there's quite a few that didn't, and different versions of it. But those later they were never released or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess a few months ago we just decided like, hey, let's pull those out and mix them and toss them out for like a 20th anniversary kind of thing, just because I don't know, they're cool versions.
Were they well received by your fans?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't make a big splash out of it. We didn't you can only get it streaming and stuff. We might actually put it on vinyl just because a few people asked for it, but it's mostly to do something with it, and kind of tell our story. Everybody's got their story about like where you were on 9/11, and it's like, well, here's where we were recording all these songs. And there's a couple of pretty cool tunes that we were like, oh shit, I forgot about that one. And a couple versions were like, well, that hasn't changed much, or that was like, wow, that's real different. But so we did that, and now we got the two. I still call them the new records, but they've been out for a year and a half. That we released right in the beginning of the pandemic. Which 2 records,
not one, but 2.
Not one, and not.
I remember there were a bunch of bands. Wasn't 9/11? It was a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that was when records came out on Tuesdays.
Robert Earle and Ryan.
Ryan. The guy who everybody loves
Whiskey
now.
Town.
Adams,
yeah. That's it.
Shh, you can't say his name.
Don't say it 3 times.
And the Derailers had one.
Yeah, but Robert Earle's, I remember, was the one that I remember it was going to be coming out. And I don't know if they postponed it or if it just probably didn't, because how could you postpone it? Because you didn't know until that morning.
That's right.
But it was similar for us in the pandemic, although we had plenty of time. We were just like, well, we'd already recorded the record a year and a half before, and 2 records. And it was just like, we need to put something out, because we were also like, we're not going to be working for a while. So maybe we'll make a few bucks off of this thing. So we put it out in May of 2020. It
makes you realize how important it is for bands like us to be on the road.
Anymore, yeah.
When new music comes.
That's
well,
the only
way to make money, for sure.
Bread and butter.
I mean, I was talking to my brother about this the other day, and I've talked to other musicians too. Like, aren't we lucky that we spent all those years when you could sell records, still just focusing on the road?
Yeah, I know.
And it's always been the only. I've made 90% of my income on the road for 30 years.
Always, yeah.
So it's like, it's no different. And it's kind of always been the same for musicians that don't go platinum.
Well, and it's kind of the same for us. Like when we were on Sugar Hill, God bless them, we probably sold, I'm going to throw out a bullshit number right out of my ass. So I have no idea what the actual number is. But with Sugar Hill, we probably sold maybe 30, 40,000 records or something, And we didn't see a goddamn dime.
Nothing.
So it's the same.
It's always been the same.
That's always been the same. We're still not making any money.
Go back to the guys in the 50s, the 60s. Like the music business has always been, if you don't like the deal, man, go back home.
Yeah, exactly. They just figured out a new way to keep all the money, which is Spotify, the bald guy.
Yeah.
That fucking guy's name is. But the difference is now it's like COVID comes along. It's like, oh, well, it's cool. We'll still make money on the road. And COVID's like, the fuck you are.
Yeah, that's the Achilles heel of this deal.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've had to be pretty goddamn creative.
Well, you always have been, man. I love hanging out with you guys, your band, your brothers. And the reference I made to us being roaches is like you've always been creative about how to stay alive and keep moving and not get stuck in a corner with some boot coming up your ass. You know, it's like you guys have always been the band that goes, just like you guys we've always talked about this together about how we work.
Yeah. Well, and that's always been our thing. Like we want to make a living doing this, you know, and whatever it takes to do that that's the priority has always been the music, you know, make music that we're proud of and hopefully we'll be proud of in 20 years or 50 years or whatever. And then the second thing is like, can we make a living doing this? You know, and not like, can we make $1 million doing this or be rock stars? Like, but can we make a living? And that's been like our business model. And I don't know, maybe it's not the best business model ever. Maybe we could have been a lot more successful, but that's what we've always tried to do is like make good music and make a living doing it. And like, we still can do that because that's what our crowd expects. And that's what we're fucking looking for, you know? Yeah.
When you're a band like you guys, the amount of popularity that you have, I've always thought this is more cultural than anything else. Because if a band like you guys, in order to fit in with the times, and I went through this for a couple of years, in order to fit in with what's going on where the real big money is, you got to kind of put on a suit that's not that comfortable.
Yeah, and that's one thing we never have done. And I don't know, looking back, I'm not sorry we never did.
You shouldn't be.
You know, because it's like when we first moved to Austin, like the first few years, like we got hit up by every single label, manager, publisher, yada, yada, out of mostly Nashville and even LA. And I don't know, we were probably a little cocky back in the day, but we were just like, no, we're not doing any of that shit. Like, and we weren't like shunning the deal, but we wouldn't give them, like, they would be like, so if you guys just change this one little thing or maybe cut this track or whatever, like it might be different. And we're just like, nope. And, you know, looking back on that, like we could have played ball a little bit, but at the same time, like, I don't know what that would have done to change the trajectory of where we are now.
Yeah.
And if we'd have lost fans or if we'd have lost our compass or whatever. So I don't really regret not taking those opportunities like in the day, but we also maybe set ourselves up to be like the band that wouldn't play ball. You know, like, well, I think we probably got a reputation pretty quickly that they were like, don't even talk to those guys because they ain't gonna.
It's funny how that works, man. You said maybe we could have played ball a little bit, and from my experience is that you don't play ball a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like you can't just get in there and
next thing you know, you got two balls in your
hand. Then you're like, okay. So it's just a different, then you're like, all right, man, let's call this for now. Thanks, Willie. I love you, man. It's great seeing you.
Thanks for having me.
Ending with a blowjob reference. I like it.
I love it. Hey, have you got time to do 5 minutes of my questions from the hat?
Absolutely.
I got to run out to the truck and get the bag of questions.
All right, cool.
All right.
I just don't.
Oh, you got a bag.
I got a bag. It's not. I can put them in a hat though. I should probably do that for the show.
Do you want me to do it vertical or horizontal?
Let's go horizontal.
Okay.
Like a fucking professional. Start recording right now, actually. So I can.
Horizontal.
Because you're the first guy. You're the guinea pig.
Oh, I'm the guinea pig.
Are we rolling?
Yes.
Rolling.
Okay, so. Episode 1, guinea pig. I don't even know what I'm calling the show. I think I'm going to call it Questions from the Hat. And luckily, Jack has a hat here. And I've written down a bunch of random questions. All right.
All right.
Now, this is an unconventional interview. And like I said, you're my guinea pig. So basically, you draw as many questions as you want from the hat. You can draw 1 or 2, 10. And then we just discuss. They're actually not even questions. They're just topics. And we'll discuss.
I like this topic.
That's a blank one. Oh, I wanted you to write one for me. So when we're done, I'll have you write a question to put in a hat for the next guy. Okay, so.
Best Tom Petty album.
Perfect start. What a great first question for this Yeah. What do you
It's
think?
either Damn the Torpedoes or is it Wallflower?
Wildflowers.
Wildflowers.
Yeah, Wildflowers.
And I think there's an argument that they both can be the best because one was in 1980 and one was in 1996 or 5.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would say Wildflowers is the masterpiece. I'd actually go with Full Moon Fever.
Oh,
Personally.
with
Jeff Lynne.
Free Falling.
Yeah.
And all that
Jeff
ELO
Lynne's
stuff.
That's the first record he made, I think, without the rest of the Heartbreakers and with Jeff Lynne.
Okay, but there's something about that first record, man. Just like when you guys were first a band showing up to KLBJ hammered in the morning and screw it and fuck it all and we're just here to be, I'm just a singer in a rock and roll band kind of vibe.
Yeah.
There's some kind of exciting thing about that we all get to feel. Like I got to feel that as in my early mid 20s too. Like where you don't even know what's happening. You're just running as fast as you can.
You don't realize that was the time of your life.
Man, that's what I love about that
Even
record.
if you, like, I don't know if we're using these or not. I'm sorry, but we, at that point, it was like you didn't realize that was the best it was ever going to get. You just were looking down the road like, oh man, if this is this great now, how great is
Look
it
at all
gonna
this
be?
chocolate. Let's eat it all. It's kind of like that. So, Damn the Torpedoes is the young cow saying, let's run down there and fuck a cow. And Wildflowers is the one who goes,
The
old
old
cow,
bull.
old bull going, no, let's walk down and fuck them all.
Perfect.
All
All right, draw another one.
Best advice ever received. Always be yourself
Yeah.
unless you're an asshole.
Failure.
That's pretty good advice.
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You've always been yourself, but you're also an asshole. So.
Oh, that's great.
Next, you can draw as many as you want. You can draw.
I got
fucking
one
10.
more.
Like, do one more, and then we'll get out of here.
Favorite Beetle.
Who's your favorite Beetle?
This is tough, man. That's a tough one because we all know who our least favorite Beatle is.
Don't say Ringo.
I didn't say anything.
I love Ringo.
I do too. All said, the one I most identify with, not because of the talent level, but just because of his take. I always loved Lennon's ability to just piss on things while also admiring them and understanding and respect of the talent, but also being able to be very irreverent, like, fuck you.
Yeah,
So
that's a good answer.
and I love it that Paul's still like a kid and George was most underrated, but yeah, Lennon was my guy.
All right, that's a good answer.
Thank
All
you.
right, that's been questions from the
I
hat.
like questions from the hat.
Number one. Thanks for being my guinea pig.
Absolutely. That's a good one.
All right, yeah, and that's totally random. Oh wait.